Welcome back to the Hip Replacement Podcast. I'm Chris Bystriansky, your host. I'm also a double hip replacement patient, more than 12 years out from one and more than 10 years out from the other. And I'm here to share my experiences with you. And today, I really want to boil things down for folks, okay? I want to explain what the three paths are that people can be on after a hip replacement patient. Okay, so there's only three paths. You only have three options of roads that you can take after coming out of a hip replacement surgery. And I'm talking about not only the days, months, but even the years after the surgery. And I'm still on a road. I'm still on a path, more than 12 years. And I'll be on that path for the rest of my life. So let's just talk about the three different paths that someone can be on and see if you can identify which path you're on. Okay, so here's the first type of path. You're not as good as you were before the hip replacement surgery. So it's a sinking path. Okay, so think about it like this: life for you was about a 6 out of a 10 before hip replacement surgery, and now it's a 4 out of 10. So it's come down, your quality of life, your outlook on life, the things you want to do. So it's a sense of, I'm not a clinical psychiatrist or anything like that, but just from layman's terms, it's almost like a depression that someone could go through after having this life impact, this type of surgery that they go through. So it's almost like moving backwards in life. And I consider that a negative trajectory. Okay, so if you think about the trajectory of one's life, if it's flat, it's the same before and after. You go through time and everything's about the same, maybe a little bit happier, a little bit sadder, a little bit, but generally about the same. And then you could have trajectory that's down, okay, and then trajectory that's up in life. So this particular one, this first path that you could possibly be on is the sinker type path, where your life doesn't feel as great or as good or as normal as it did before the surgery. Okay. Then there's the second path. I would consider this to be like a rebounding path, where life's about the same. Your trajectory is about the same as it was going to be before you had the surgery, or if you never had the surgery, your life's about the same. So if life for a person on this path was a 6 out of 10 before they had the surgery, and if they never had to have the surgery, well, after, it's still a 6 out of 10. Life is as back to normal as possible. It's the same trajectory. So we'll call this path the swimmer path. So the first one was a sinker, and this one's a swimmer. They're treading water. They're on the same trajectory they would have been on anyway, regardless of the hip surgery. It's like it never happened. Okay? And the attitude is really, well, whatever happens, happens. I'm just going to go through my life, and I'm going to be on the trajectory that I was regardless of a hip replacement surgery. And that's fine. But let's just identify what these paths are. So the first one is a sinker path. The second one's a swimmer path. And the third path is really where someone excels. Someone's life actually gets better after a hip replacement surgery. So if we're talking numbers again, if their life was a 6 out of 10 before the hip replacement surgery, well, after they recover, months, years later, it's now an 8 out of 10. They're getting closer to that perfect, whatever they consider the perfect life for them. They're getting an increase. They're accelerating their outlook on life. Okay, so their outlook on life, their quality of life is higher than it was before. And I consider this the flyer path. Okay, so we have the sinker path. Someone's path is less. Someone's life is less than it was before the surgery. Then we have the swimmer path that is about equal. The surgery really didn't have an impact. And then we have the flyer path, which is a positive trajectory. It's an accelerated trajectory after the surgery. And that's what happened to me because I wanted to do more. The surgery was kind of a wake-up call or a kick in the pants or a reality check, my midlife crisis, whatever you want to say. I wanted to do things that I had no desire to do before. Endurance events. Leave my corporate job and start helping other people. Just doing different things rather than having a normal life. Okay? So I was on a swimmer path before, without a hip surgery. And then because of the surgery, I just wanted to feel that I was getting better, doing more productive things, having more fun with my life. And because of that, it put me on a different trajectory in my life, if that makes any sense. Okay? So there you have it. Those are the three paths, and that's it. Your life gets worse, your life stays the same, or your life gets better. All right? And what is it about these paths? Like, how does one get on one of these paths compared to the other? Is it just accidental? Is it coincidence? Or what is it? But I would say it's a combination of factors, and I broke it down to these 5 elements. All right, and the first element. Think about where you are with these elements. All right, number 1, the predisposition. What's your outlook on life to begin with? Are you always looking at the good? Are you always looking at the bad? Is something that happens to you, could it be interpreted as good or bad and you're always one way or the other? There are people out there who are negative no matter what happens, and there are people out there who are positive no matter what happens. And let me share this, that my young daughter's on a golf team at school, and there's 8 girls on the team, and one of the girls on the team is the most positive person I've ever met in my entire life. Smiling all the time, no matter what happens. Happy all the time, no matter what happens. If it's raining, she couldn't be happier. If it's sunny, she couldn't be happier. If it was cloudy, she couldn't be happier. Windy, she couldn't be happier. She's always got something positive to say about whatever adversity comes the team's way. So even in a loss, she'll say something like, well, it was great to get out here with you girls, and I think we all learned something, so we'll just build on this until next time, and we'll get them next time. Or if it's raining, it's like, well, at least it cooled off. It's not as hot anymore, and the grass needs to stay lush so we can have good golf experiences, so I'm glad it's raining. Or if the sun's out, it's hot. Well, the plants need to eat, need to produce their own food, so I'm glad it's sunny. It's almost, I'm not going to call it nauseating, but it's so refreshing to see somebody like that who is just so positive and just wanting to do other things, just wanting to look at things from the positive side. And the second, number 2, resilience. The second element I would consider to be resilience. How does someone deal with adversity? In their past, what kind of experience do they have dealing with challenges, and what has been done to forge themselves to handle challenges? If somebody can somebody can go through absolute hell and have a positive outlook because they're resilient, because they've practiced addressing adversity. And one of the great ways to do this is one of the great ways to build up resiliency in dealing with adversity is to do something hard, to keep doing things that are hard. You know, we start when we're young doing somewhat difficult things. A lot of things seem difficult. And then as we get older, we fall into the trap of just doing the same old things, routine, not challenging ourselves, not learning anything. But a lot of times, people do challenge themselves. People do want to learn new things. They make it hard on themselves. That's one of the reasons why I did the Ironmans or any endurance event, is because doing things like that carries over into everything else that we do in our lives. It makes us more resilient to other challenges that we might have. Let me share this and that. In one of the Ironmans I did, there's people from all over the world, okay? And it was the day before, this was in Arizona, and the day before the event is supposed to start, we got word that because there's big announcements and there's meetings for athletes and everything, and just word gets around. There was probably 4,000 athletes there, and word got around that one of the athletes was coming from the UK, and he was there. He arrived like the night before, all right? And the airline lost all of his luggage, lost his bike, lost all of his gear, lost his wetsuit for the swim, the goggles, bike shoes, bike, helmet, water bottles, clothes. He had nothing. He had like a little carry-on bag with just some clothes that he was going to wear after the event. But all of his stuff, all of his equipment, gone. So he had two options. Number one, call it quits, pack it up, say, oh, well, the airline lost my luggage, so I can't race, and shame on them, airline. So, you know, sorry, I can't do it. I don't have my stuff. And basically would have taken a negative attitude about it. Totally understandable, because you train with that stuff for months, if not years, to get ready for one of these events. The fitting that you go through to be on your bike for that long, for a 112-mile bike ride, and making sure it fits the right way is very important. Well, he didn't have that. So word got out, and all of a sudden, people were donating extra stuff to him. A bike company let him use a bike, a helmet, shoes. A wetsuit company let him use a wetsuit, and all these vendors were there at the race. They're just normally there, and all this equipment just came on top of this guy. So he was able to get all of this stuff. Now, none of the stuff was his, and it would have made it more difficult because it was uncomfortable. It didn't fit him right, but he still used it all and finished the event. Now you think about, you know, the airlines lose luggage all the time, okay? And it's one thing if they just lose some of your clothes, but some of your equipment that you've been training in for a long time for this very special occasion. I mean, a lot of people would have flown off the handle. I don't know how I would have handled it. I hope I would have handled it like this guy did from the UK. I'm not sure I would have. I hope I would have, but who knows? But just building up that resilience or that grit and dealing with adversity is very important, because it helps in situations like this after hip replacement surgery. It puts us on a certain path. Are we ready for this adversity? Have we practiced being in adverse situations? So that's the second element. What's the resilience, or how well do you handle adversity? The third element, are you an action taker? And let me say this is so important. This is like, if you take anything away from this podcast episode, it might be this. Action takers are success makers. Okay? If you take action, if you want an outcome, are you doing anything to promote that outcome, to go and encourage that outcome, to make it happen? What are you doing? I have a very good friend who says, you can pray all you want, but while you're praying, move your feet. And what that means is take action while you're doing other things to try to encourage your success. All right. So taking action and not having this mentality of, well, I'll get to it someday or I'll get to it tomorrow. We all know people like that, procrastinators or people who just say things and never really intend on taking that action. I'll lose weight tomorrow. I'll go on a diet in January. I'll make amends or I'll talk to this person. I'll say I'm sorry later. All right. I'll start eating healthy later. That's not taking action. Taking action is, let's do it right now. Let's do something to promote the outcome that we want. All right. Because taking action generates momentum and progress, and that increases our motivation. Okay. A lot of people think that, well, I need to be motivated before I can exercise. I need to be motivated before I can take some action. And that's not correct. That the sequence is wrong. It's got to be reversed. You have to take action, and then that turns into motivation and momentum and progress. And then you get on this big cycle of, you start with action, you have momentum because you see some progress. And then you want to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. You can't wait to feel motivated to take the action. You got to do the action first, then motivation follows. Okay? So taking action. Fourth thing, what is your support group look like? What kind of network do you have? One of the biggest indicators of life expectancy and quality of life is your social network. Your network of people that you spend time with. Maybe you're going out to eat. Maybe you're going out for a walk. Maybe you're going golfing. Maybe you're going to bingo, whatever it is. Do you have people that you spend time with? So who's around you? What kind of influence are they? Are they healthy? Are they positive? Or are they drink as much alcohol as they can, eat as much junk food as they can, not very active? You can decide on these networks and social support that you have. So very important element here. Fifth thing, and this might be, one other thing about the support group, and that we are very human. Okay, I mean, it sounds obvious, but we are very human animals, I guess you'd say. And we all strive for a human connection. We all strive for that human connection because we want to be validated. We want people to look at us and talk to us, acknowledge that we exist, acknowledge that we're relevant. And if we have that, it really fuels a lot of other things in our lives. It really helps us move forward when we're not feeling our best. If we have that human connection, it's like fuel for us. And that goes a long way. So don't cut short your network and your social contacts. If you're sitting inside alone or with the same person and they're not as positive as they could be, think about changing that situation, because if you're on the wrong path, this could be why. Right? The fifth element, and this might be the most impactful. I see this all the time. So it's pride. It's people refusing help. Okay. I have relatives like this. I have friends like this. Their attitude is, no, I don't need any help. I don't need any help. I'm good. I don't, I'm good. They want to like maintain their independence. But think about it this way. They're really robbing other people of the opportunity to help them. All right? That's kind of turning something on its head. You know, it's almost a selfish thing to not accept help. Think about how you feel when you help somebody. I love helping people. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I'm contributing. It makes me feel validated. It makes me proud that I'm able to help somebody, that my skills are helping somebody else. And if they reject that, it stings a little bit. But not only for me, but for them, it's not helping that person because they likely need the help. They likely need the support. And when we're going through a hip replacement surgery, I've had plenty of people say, oh, I'm going to be by myself. I don't need physical therapy. I don't need anybody to come and help me get around the house or do the grocery shopping for me. And I feel a little bit bad for that person because we all need that help. People are not as successful as they can be if they're by themselves. All right. I don't know if it's a sense of embarrassment or they want to protect their independence. Possibly. And I have an aunt, and she's in her 80s, and she fell down the stairs, not like tumbled down the stairs. She slipped a couple times and broke her foot. She just slid down the stairs, and at the bottom, she broke her foot. And even then, she doesn't acknowledge that she needs help getting around the house, but she does. But it's hard to watch. You want to help people, but if they're so stubborn's not the word because they have a reason for doing what they're doing, but it would just be better for everybody and put her on a different path than if she were to continue to reject the help that is offered to her. And we all know people that they don't want any help. They don't think they need it. Maybe they don't think they're entitled to it. But I know from my side, and I've talked to other folks about this too, that we feel good when we help people. All right. So pride is that fifth element that can put us on a specific path, either, a sinker, a swimmer, or a flyer path. So now you understand a little bit more of why you're on a path, why you're on the path that you're on. And by the way, have you looked into which path you might be on? Is your life worse than before hip replacement surgery in any aspect? Is it about the same as it would have been regardless? Or is it better? Right? There are ways to put ourselves on these paths, and we have a lot of control of this. But the funny part, or the more interesting part, is these paths that we're on after a hip replacement surgery, or the path that we're on after a hip replacement surgery, may not be isolated to the hip replacement surgery. It may apply. We may have a path for every aspect of our life, our health, our relationships, our financial situation. All right. So, it's pretty easy to see after a surgery, but these things may be applicable to other areas of our lives. So how do we get on these paths, and how do we change the paths? How can we upgrade our life? Well, the key point is that you have to realize that you have the power. You have the power to move onto a different path. And frankly, by being here and listening to this podcast, that means you're taking some action. You're doing something, and that's a great start. All right? I mean, we don't want anyone to be on that sinker path. And frankly, we don't want anyone to be on that swimmer path. You know, the sinker path is is putting us on a path of worse life. The swimmer path is keeping us on the same trajectory, the same path that we were on before. Frankly, there's a lot more out there for us. And there's even more for the flyer path. Someone whose life is better. That can still be maximized to make it even better. And once we know what path we're on, we know the starting point. We know where we are, and we know what each of these needs. So identify what path you're on. The sinker, the swimmer, the flyer. And we'll go into what it takes to get off of that path and onto a flyer path. You know, if you're a sinker, let's get you to a swimmer, or let's go straight to being a flyer, right on that flyer path. And these are topics we can talk about that for a long time. So I'm going to save that for our next episode. So our next episode will be about what behaviors or what is needed to move people between paths, to really accelerate and give them a better life. You can have a better life after hip surgery than you would have if you never had hip surgery. It's possible. So we'll save that topic for our next episode. I hope this was helpful to you to understand really where you are and that there's other possibilities out there. All right. I'm in a lot of mentorship groups, and I have coaches that are well beyond success in me than I am. And the reason I do that, the reason I pay money to go into these other mentorship programs is not only to see what the leader, what the coach, what the mentor is doing, what they're doing in their lives to be successful, but what everyone else is doing, everyone else in that group, you know, whether it's 20 people or 50 people, they are thinking about things and doing things that I would never think about. And I'm doing the same with them. But just by being around these other people, I get to experience different things in life, different questions to ask, different actions to take that really help me elevate my life, hip replacement surgery or not. All right. So I hope that's helpful. And thank you so much for tuning into the Hip Replacement Podcast. And until next time, I wish you the best recovery possible.